Hi, today I'm here with the creators of the game Plasticity. This is a student team led by Tim and Amy from the University USC.
As a freshman, you come into the school. One of the first few classes to get to do is the 48 class, is the board game class, and that's very pivotal because perhaps some people may be wondering why, like me, right? When I first entered, why am I making a board game when I came into the school to make computer games? But board games are fundamental to game design. And so during that class, like it will really open your mindset to a world where games are more than just digital. Because that's something I grew up with. Like most of my games that I play were digital, but there are lots of physical games, including big games and even LARP, right? That's something you get to experience while at school. And then as you go on, of course, there's like intermediate, which lets you work in a small team of up to 3 to 5 people, I think. And then afterwards, you for the capstones, you have both this AGP and experimental game design. So you can choose one or either, or you can do both, right? If you're really crazy. And
You can't do both if you're a director, though.
yeah, you can't do both if you're a director, yeah. And so I think like students always have choices at USC. And when you go through the program, for example, like Amy and I did completely different electives as well. So like Amy did the usability course. I didn't do that course, but I did the production course in preparation for the AGP. And like you also get to do your minors. So the video games program isn't like for example, like the Viterbi program for game design is like a full course. It will take up all your time, so it's tough to do a minor. But for the interactive media program at the cinema school, you're able and you are supported by the faculty, to go and take a minor as well, especially in other schools. For example, they have a minor in video game entrepreneurship that ties up with the entrepreneurship school as well. And they also have like in audio design, which ties up with Thornton, the music school at USC. So that those minors and those cross collaborations are equally important for making a game and to opening up that hey, there are different disciplines in game design more than just a traditional game designer, gameplay engineer.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
or producer.
almost every undergrad that I knew had a minor because the program, the way that the interactive media and game design program is structured, like allows students to branch out and find like their other forte. Like the way that I remember Colin Kelly, um our counselor told us was like you have one punch, you have like one arm that's your design punch, and then you can find your other arm, which could be like usability or programming or art or
A lot of people might not know about the USC program is it's a little unique in that unlike other schools, it allows teams to have a huge amount of students working on it. So this team actually was composed of over 30 different students. I'd like to ask you, Tim, how did you manage to wrangle that many students on a single project? How did you divide tasks? How did you even approach that problem?
Yeah, the production in terms of managing a massive team, definitely I I think that's it was one of the weaknesses. I think that was tough because not many game schools provide a production course. So a lot of times you learn on your feet and you learn from the teachers that they provide, the professors who have industry knowledge as well. And so for us, it was really learning on the job and learning how to handle 30 students and to break that up as well. So not many game students who go inside want to be producers, right? So finding extra producers to help on the team, that was also a trouble as well. There are a total of 7 leads, and you have to, coordinate with them every week. Plus, you have to do. We decide to go with leads, would then disseminate information to their teams. So, for example, the art team. So the leads will discuss, they'll convene and discuss about what to do this week. So our weekly scrum, And then after that, we would break up into our teams, and then our 5 teams, and then discuss on how to tackle each week's problems and challenges. And that's how we got through with 30 students. Part of the USC Advanced Games program, they actually divided up already. So you have the ability to fill those roles or not. And so those seven game director, producer, the lead designer, the lead artist, the lead engineer, lead usability, and I believe there's also audio as well, and marketing, yes.
When like huge design decisions are being made, it's usually being made between the director and the lead designer, or the director and the lead artist, versus like if I'm just working with, let's say, you, me, and Tim, we could all make a decision together on sort of larger pieces of the game.
Yeah, it's tougher to be more democratic as you scale your team size.
One thing that was helpful was the way that our program is structured. Before we jumped on these like huge 20 to 30 person teams, prior to taking this class, we worked on projects where we collaborated with smaller team sizes. And then this, as our like final, we got to collaborate with lots of students. And part of the reason why our team was much larger because we did a collaboration with the USC Dornsife Environmental Studies program. Before I recruited a team of 30 students to work on plasticity, I wanted to really make sure that I felt really solid about my concept, right? First, me and Michelle, we created a prototype for 6 months, like proving the concept, making sure that we understood like what kind of progression that we wanted for the game and what did we want to say with our like player experience goal. And then from there we were able to figure out what roles we needed for the team and who we should recruit. Start with your player experience goal first. What do you want to communicate with your game? What do you want people to say or feel or experience when they're playing through your game? And make your decisions from there.
And from production side, it's, get someone to hold you accountable when you're making a game as well. I find it really helps you like, put out the game. So getting an end goal for your game is really important, right? What do you want to do with your game? Do you want a game to be an exploration or some kind of new design that you thought of? Do you want a game to be on Steam or itch.io? Do you want a game to, get renowned or win prizes? Do you want your game to be used to help you as a platform to get, to start your game dev career? Or do you want it to be used to get your internship or to submit it to festivals or schools? I think that having an end goal is also very important to the overall game design because it helps you scope it down. I mean, if you want to finish a game within 3 months as opposed to within a year, the game's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, something that we knew when we were building this project was that we would only have 9 months to finish it. So, like, the kind of scope decisions that we made were based off of knowing that time limit. One thing that we did to organize our team was we met every single week where we would work together for 5 or 6 hours together. And if a student was less experienced, we would pair them with a student that had more experience.
Making a student do a game because you told them to, that doesn't make sense, right? And so a lot of times, like what Amy said, it really comes from like, your love for game design and your passion. So that I think for student game development, it's a very different type of team as compared to corporate work teams or professional indie dev teams. Human resource side, the morale of the team, the relationships you develop are more important than I would say than the work that comes out, on a weekly basis. Of course, hit your goals, hit the goals that your team wants, but make sure to look out for, healthy practices, especially for like burnout or for like making sure the relationships work for this.
We would always make sure that everyone understood their deadlines, and if they couldn't meet them, then they'd communicate that. And that allowed us to produce this game well. So we could plan and know, like, oh, this task can't be done by this person, so we can allow these other 3 people to tackle it instead. Um, and then when that person can come back and join the team, then they can work on it. So that definitely helped. Some of the resources that we had were definitely our professors at USC Games. There are like, I believe, like 9 professors that are part of the class, each with a different department. So we had like a design professor, engineering professor, audio professor, um, and even we had a directors meeting slash class that we took um, for specifically the game directors of the class. One thing that we specifically did was we wanted to utilize the other resources that we had at USC. So we reached out to um, the Dornsife chair, the environmental studies department, and Dr. Carla Heidelberg. We would create plasticity, we would make a build every week, and then we would play test it with students from the Dornsife school.
Oh no, I just wanted to add on the in terms of facilities, USC also has a usability lab that's fully equipped. So you'll find these usability labs as well in like big corporations or bigger game dev companies.
It's like a room, and there's like a one-way window, and on one side is the playtester who's playing the game, and then um, kind of doing like stream of consciousness, like while they're playing the game, they're saying everything that they're thinking and what they're frustrated with or what they like. And then our usability researchers on the other side watching and recording the data.
And like inside the room, you have your your playtester come in, right? And they have multiple camera angles that allows you to see like their facial reactions, or the way they're typing on the keyboard, or the way they're playing the game as well. And then of course you can always ask them questions while they're playing, but a lot of times we actually, we practice not asking them unless they're really stuck. But we do ask play testers. We remind them to speak up when they play, because that speaking the mind while they're playing the game is very important to us, so that we can insight into the player's mind.
And getting that data was super helpful in building this game because then we could figure out what doesn't make sense to the player, where are they getting stuck, um, do they understand the story or the environmental significance of what they're doing or this area that they're in. Um, yeah, I'm super glad that we had that a part of our program. We would track every time the player would press the control key, which is like the one interact key in our game. So then we would figure out like, oh, there's something, if they were pressing it at a time that they weren't supposed to, we would guess there was something in the environment that looked like it was interactable. So yeah, we definitely had an interview process for plasticity. So um, we like put out a bunch of flyers. We asked anyone to apply to our team and for a specific role that we listed out. And then me, Tim, Michelle, or whoever lead that was involved with the role would interview that student. And then if everything was good to go, we'd add them to our Slack and then we'd see them on Sunday. So it was one of the first times that we had run any sort of interview. We were, you know, I was a junior in college, barely did very many job interviews beforehand, but things that we would ask them about were if they understood, if they had any questions about what we were trying to achieve with their game, and then we would ask them kind of role specific questions. So if they were an artist, for instance, we were making a low poly 3D game that required texturing and UV unwrapping. So we would ask them their skill set and then look at their portfolio. Um, and usually we would just look at their past work and ask them questions about their previous projects and what they did on them to get a sense of like how they would fit with our team, both like culturally and like through skill, like by skill set. And yeah.
Mhm. Also looking at, I mean, if they allow us, right, to let us know how much of the time in the week they would like to give. That was most a big part as well. It's like, their
hmm
commitment to the project, because it's gonna be a whole year, spanning 2 semesters, right? And so in between you have the summer holidays. So will they come back after the summer holidays? Is a big question as well. And would they join back with us? Yeah, or during the semester, would they drop out? Because, midway through the semester, there's always like exams, or there's huge stress that piles up. It's because most of the recruitment starts at the beginning of the semester. In the beginning of the semester, everything's fun. It's all like sunny days. But once the middle of the semester hits, it's like storms everywhere, because like exams are hitting down on you. Any other big problems could happen. At least for me, I didn't plan on studying game design when I went to USC. I actually went there to pursue business, because the Marshall Business School was more well known, and the cinema school was more well known for its movie program. So when I went there, I did not know about the interactive game design course until I was there at USC, and I had studied for about a whole semester already. And then once I found out about it, I decided to take some courses in it, and then I fell in love with it. But game design wasn't something that I applied to college for. Yeah, I just want to put out that disclaimer. Yeah, my route to that might be a little bit different from those who already know they want to do game design. So yeah, and in terms of other schools, right? In terms of like why USC, at least for me as an international student, you would like to choose, I would say choose a university that matches with your goals, right? So I don't know how other universities perform. What I do know is like the person, for example, like at USC, I would say like one of the biggest things for me is the fact that they're very well connected in the industry, right? So if you're pursuing a career in video game development and would like to do AAA games or even indie games is good too, USC is a really great place because its brand name can get you somewhere.
When I was looking at schools when I was a senior in high school, I applied to like NYU, UCSC, and was looking at a lot of different game programs. One thing that attracted me to USC was the fact that it was ranked number one in game design. Um, and I chose the school because I wanted to learn from the professors that were working there. Like there are phenomenal professors at those other schools, but I like particularly really wanted to learn from Tracy Fullerton and Richard LaMartian. One thing that really impressed me was seeing the student games that were already coming out of the school, like Chambara, and a few other student games that were coming out. And I knew I wanted to collaborate with students that were just as passionate about games as I was. So I knew that it was like a smaller program and that they admit about 18 kids a year, and I think that that was something that really appealed to me. Um, and when I was doing like college tours, I felt intuitively I was like, this is the right place for me. So I chose that school for that reason. I think like a lot of students end up with a lot of like unfinished projects in their portfolio when they go to game school, but something that the professors really like dawned on us was like we should finish our projects and we should put them out there. So like when I was 17 and I met Tim, we took 488 like a game design board game class. Um, and even though we didn't feel really confident about it, we decided to take it through a class called Finishing and Polishing and put the game up on Kickstarter. And so like by the time that we graduated school, we had a bunch of different projects because we did it with every single project that we worked on there. Um, that
Yeah.
were just out there. Um, and I don't know what it's like at other schools, but that's something that was just super helpful, and I'm glad that I learned at USC. I think like what was awesome about our team was everyone wanted to work on the game, and if they didn't know something, then they really wanted to learn how to do it. Um, so we would be teaching each other. Like I remember, um, like Justin Liu, who's our lead artist, and we would like teach each other things about different 3D programs. And I know that like one of our animators taught us how to animate in Maya and use different tools. So it was definitely very much collaborative learning. Um, yeah, I think everything was balanced in that sort of way. And sometimes it would be more like one student would be helping another student learn so that they could contribute to their full capacity, which was great. So I think like one of the big parts of the class is learning by doing, and helping each other along the way because we're all just students and we're all just learning how to make this really difficult video game. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. I think in terms of video games for student teams, right? It's definitely good to have a culture of like, they would say like fail forward, right? So like even if you're experimenting or doing something new and it doesn't
Mm.
pan out, don't beat yourself up over it, right? Just move on and learn from it and then go to the next stage. I think that's very important to have as well in terms of the mindset of the team.
I feel like knowing what I know now, I really wish that we'd realized that we needed text a lot sooner in the process. I was really stubborn, in that for like 8 months of our development, I didn't want any words in our game. I didn't want any text. Um, and it wasn't really until we got a lot of playtest data that players didn't know what was happening, uh, that we added a lot of the narrative and the story and like the words that ground our experience. And I wish that we had, you know, that I had realized that sooner and listened to my team. Um, and we could have polished that text a lot more. I think that was like one of my failures as a director to not to be so um, attracted to that idea that I just didn't want to let it go until it was very late. And of course, things turned out okay, but that was definitely something that I learned on that project and something I could have done better. I was so stubborn about this idea of what I wanted the game to be and how it would be hmm, that that very specific idea would like make the experience better when in reality and all of the evidence showed that it didn't. I wish I could give an analogy. It's like I was making a dress for a beautiful wedding and like really wanted to use purple, but like everything about the wedding like wouldn't work with that purple dress, but I was so attracted to the idea of having a purple dress that I was really stubborn about it until the last minute. Like that's kind of what happened. So I wish I was less stubborn and less and looked at, the evidence that it wasn't working for it.
Yeah, but that said too, there's also looking at it's also Amy's like concrete vision to help shape the game into what it is now, right? Without that vision, I mean, there's the part about like being stubborn that's really important, and especially because sometimes the professors do play when it comes to evaluating a game at each milestone, right? Professors do play the role of like shareholders, right? For example, like a company when you're pitching, they do play that role. And so, sometimes you have to stand up for certain like game design choices or something. You have to stand behind your team. And that's also a test and a trait of a game director as well as, looking at the vision that perhaps they have created or the one that you've created with your team and saying, yes, this is the right vision and we're going to pursue it to the end. Sometimes, we stumble, but we'll always go back to the right track. And yeah, and for the texting, it was like it was not without precedent too. I mean, we looked at games that actually worked without text, and so we tried to emulate that. But then again, you have to look at, for example, Inside was a very big reference for us, but it's also a very amazing game that does a lot of things that took a long time to develop as well. And so you have to look at like, can we do that same thing, but they did within 8 months or a year? You
We
know?
kept saying like this game's got to be better than Inside, which is crazy because that team is so phenomenal and they worked for like 6 or 7 years on that game. It's like a masterpiece. But we had really high standards. So we worked over the summer before the school year started on this project and we did a lot of planning. We made a bunch of planning documents, like we did a whole game macro of like everything that we wanted in the game on paper and like storyboarded out. And we made a production schedule for the entire year. But as production like started ramping up and we were around alpha, like obviously like the thing that we made prior to school starting like was no longer applicable. And one thing that we kind of struggled to kind of accept was to scope down around alpha. And if I were to do this again, I would definitely have cut things sooner now that I understand like the velocity that my team can work at. How much content can we create in an amount of time? I think that's something that any director has to think about and like continue shaping the size of their vision and the size of their game as they're learning more about the team that they're working with. If our game is like speed, like someone plays it really, really fast, I think it's about like 15 to 20 minutes. And if someone plays like the full experience with all four endings, it's around 45 minutes. Um, Originally, we planned for like an hour and a half because we set our goal really, really high. And we knew that we were eventually going to scope down, but we couldn't know until we started working with our team. I think like it was a good thing for us to like set our expectations and our goals really high at the beginning and then scope down from there and know that we were going to scope down from there. But I do wish that we did it sooner.
Yeah, I mean, when you asked that question, the first thing that jumped to mind was your experience goals, right? What you outline at the start. Need to look back at it and say, does this, feature, or what do we want to cut? Does that impact our bottom line, which is these experience goals? If we cut this certain feature or this certain mechanic, will our experience goal be diluted or will it vanish? I think that's very important to look at when you do cut something.
So we set like player experience goals at the very beginning of Plasticity, and the way that we figured out what to cut was what wouldn't add to that goal, what wouldn't make people feel hopeful or inspired to make sustainable choices in their lives. And sometimes we would cut things that weren't far along enough in development. Like we for Plasticity, we had planned to create this like city and talk about kind of corporate pollution, but by then, when we had created like all the designs for it, even did a lot of gray box art for it, it wasn't far along enough in terms of like polish for us to continue working on it. Um, so we originally had like 5 or 6 sections to the game, and by the time that we hit beta, if it wasn't far along enough, we knew that we couldn't hit Gold Master with all of it, and so we cut things that we knew we couldn't bring to the same level of polish the other game was at.
A production role is something perhaps that not many people go into those schools to pursue. And so even at USC, there are only a couple of classes that help you get started. And most of the time it's around like 5, the number is usually around like 7. Your team would be around 7 to 14, but taking on the size of 30 or anything past 20, right? It is an enormous endeavor. And I think I definitely underestimated it when I first came in. And definitely what I did not know when I came in, and this was a big takeaway, is that student teams operate differently from teams that I would say like corporate teams or professional teams, because you're at school to learn and you're at school, you're paying to be there to do, in addition to your normal course, you're doing other courses. For example, like when you're undergrad, your general curriculum as well. And that's tough. For example, like I would be going to like, my writing class and then bam into like game design. And then after maybe a game design class, I've got, my business classes. And so it's just like pulling you in so many directions. And that I thought I didn't apply that knowledge immediately. And so when I realized like halfway through the year, when everyone had that same feeling, it was a little bit too late to help implement strategies to combat that, because I'd come into this team thinking that it'll be, it would operate exactly like a professional team, when the entire team is focused on this endeavor. Right? They focus on putting out this product, but the reality is that as students, we can't have that same kind of like sheer focus unless you take away all your other subjects and all your other learnings. Just focus on doing and creating this game, which is unrealistic for a student game dev team.
I just want to say Tim was a phenomenal producer, and even though
Thank
you
you.
felt unequipped, you did an amazing job. I couldn't have done this without you. You did amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I had to rely a lot on Amy's experience as well, because Amy was a producer for AGP in a previous year. And so it was very important that she had the experience, and so she helped me along a lot as well, with the professors as well. Yeah, what would I do differently? I think there isn't really that many strategies to put into place other than like continuing recognizing and talking. Oh, no, sorry. When you space out the production schedule to include the fact that the students won't be able to do, like, for example, we said like, part-time students should do at least up to 8 hours a week of work. But to also notice like that 8 hours of week, you cannot mandate those 8 hours. Like you can say that, but what's going to stop them, right? Like if you keep pushing it, they're going to leave the team, and that's something you don't want to happen as well. So like, how do you keep that up? It's like you gotta practice in terms of like human, it's like HR in that sense, right? You got to make sure that they're well taken care of outside of the team, which means sometimes asking them, into their personal life, like going out for lunch with them, or like asking them, hey, how are you doing today? Or how are you doing this week? And that's something we started putting in only in the second semester, where like uh we will contact our the students that are not leads. Oh, we did contact the leads as well. Ask them like, how are they doing? How are the classes? How is the stress? Or like, how can you handle this week? And that really helped us in the second semester. I wish I had done that in the first semester, because in the second semester it was a little bit too late, because it felt more, while it did help, it felt more like it was like a stopgap measure, because it was tough to implement that. Yeah.
I do think one of the things that we did well was in we like coordinated our meetings like many weeks prior to them happening, and we would also um we did a lot of other like small team building things. Like we asked everyone what their favorite snack was, and we would bring it to lab every week. And really making sure that everyone felt um what's the word I'm looking for? Like comfortable to work in that space and be a part of our team. Um, yeah, that's just something like when Tim was talking about, making sure that everyone on our team was okay. I was just reminded of like how Tim started that and did a lot of these really wonderful things to make sure that everyone felt like a team. I think like from our last round of AGPs, like our year, I think we were one of the only ones to put our game up on Steam. Is that correct, Tim?
Yeah, most of them go to itch.io. Yeah, because it's important to have a place where people can play your game. So it's important to put it up somewhere. So majority of games go into itch.io. Yeah.
And
I know, like the year before us, they put their game on itch. One Hand Clapping put their game on itch, and it like blew up. It like was played by PewDiePie and like every huge streamer that we know. Um,
Markiplier. Yeah.
yeah, currently over 30,000 people have played our game. I haven't looked at the stats in a little while. We showcased the game at Indiecade at E3, and got featured by Forbes and the LA Times. We're also going to be showing our game at GDC at the Indie Mega booth.
USC, I think it earned my respect, especially in my last senior year, especially after going through the program, and like students have the opportunity to give feedback, to the professors and to the heads of the school. And I think that opportunity, they really do take that feedback into account, and they apply changes to the program as well. And the program's always evolving, and that's something I really respect. The fact that they look every year at the program, say, is this, operating as intended? Is this working out for our students? Is this benefiting them at the highest level? And that's something that earned my respect as I was graduating.
Yeah, just like games are an iterative process, it really felt like they were iterating and making the program better every single year, which is awesome.
Yeah, because the
I
games
think,
landscape changes so much every year. Like if a game school decide to focus too much on mobile games, and then bam, VR and AR games are the thing, and then after that maybe it goes back to computer games or board games. Like how does a school be agile in that format when most academia isn't? You know, and I think that's something that really earned my respect, is that the school is willing to change, to be better, to fit into a more modern era, or to upgrade themselves and look beyond what is currently trending, or what would be they looking towards the future, maybe 5 years from now as well.
I think that they made a lot of adjustments after we graduated. Even just this like past year after we graduated, they changed the structure of the AGP program. They admitted more teams. I know that they have different professors, um, and like they're using different resources to manage the program. Um, so we can't speak for even this current year because they're changing it every year. Um, I was certainly really happy with the time that I was there. That was the best part of the school, like getting to work with such phenomenal and talented and amazing students.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really miss that. I miss running into the game design students and just like, having random conversation about why we love games or the next game that's coming out. Like, I'm sure right now in school, because of the announcement of like Animal Crossing, everyone's talking about it. I'm just like, I can just imagine. Like, we have communal gathering places at USC. For example, one of them is like the Fishbowl, which is actually the faculty lounge, but they open it up to students. And
Oh,
so,
they changed that this year.
what they did, oh no, but during our time, it was a good communal place then. So you go there after class just to wait for the next class, or maybe once you're done with the day, you go there to unwind. And yeah, it was a very good area for students to just meet and talk to each other and discuss their passions. And I think those spaces are important for schools to develop as well. A bit more on the games program at USC, right? It's not just one school, interactive media and game design. It's part of the USC Games program, right? So there's a collaboration between the Viterbi Computer Science program and the Cinema School, which is interactive media and game design. So these two schools come together to work. And in recent times, just before we graduated, they're starting pulling in, the Edinburgh School for Journalism, for Communications and Marketing. And they're thinking about bringing in, looking at prospects for the business school as well. So all these things is about inter-school collaboration because looking at games, right, as an industry, you need so many diverse disciplines to come together to work and make a game, right? And so AGP really takes that and like consolidates it all and really metasizes that. But that got me thinking about the other master's program at USC because I think most universities nowadays provide a true program to do masters. So if you do your undergrad, you can finish your masters in less than full time, I think. So you can take what you learned from your undergrad and then apply it to your masters. So you can go for like a follow-up masters and maybe you complete it within, I think it was like 2 years. Yeah, so I was looking at the computer science degree.
I haven't even considered, doing a master's program. I've looked at like NYU's because it looks really cool, and I know a lot of really phenomenal developers there. Like there's this really great game called Consume Me. Yeah, she's so cool. And like I've met a lot of students who've gone there and gone through that master's program and are super impressive. So that's like the one that I've considered. But I don't think that I'll be pursuing a master's degree unless if I ever wanted to teach, which I might want to do someday, but not right now. I just want to work right now.